The Tale of Bill the Dragon. Far, far away, in a magical land called the Great Green Hills, there lived a dragon named Bill. You may think Bill is a very simple name for a dragon. Dragons usually have long, scary, important names, don't they? Maybe. But Bill had been called Bill since the day he hatched, and he liked his name very much. Bill had blue turquoise scales, big strong wings, and he knew all sorts of proper dragon tricks. But there was one dragon trick he did not like at all. He did not like breathing fire. First, because Bill was very kind, and second, because fire breathing always gave him terrible heartburn. Every morning, Bill flew out of his cave at the edge of the Great Green Hills, not far from the Kingdom of Crystal Dreams. His job was very important. He flew over the whole land and made sure everything was peaceful and safe. But lately, no one had caused any trouble at all. And truly, who would want to quarrel with a dragon? So Bill usually spent his days enjoying the sunshine, gliding through soft clouds and talking with flowers, trees, animals, and magical creatures. And please don't say that flowers and animals cannot talk. They can. It is only that people do not always understand their language. There was only one kind of creature Bill could not understand at all. People. People talked to each other all the time. They even tried to live together in little houses. Sometimes Bill saw strange wet drops on their faces. That made him feel sad, though he did not know why. But sometimes people made a lovely shape with their mouths. They called it a smile. And whenever Bill saw a smile, the person looked warm and bright and kind. Bill wanted very much to be friends with people, but whenever people saw him, they ran away. After all, Bill was a dragon, and people were afraid. One day, Bill was flying over the village of white clouds. Below, near a little stream, he saw a girl looking after a flock of geese. She had kind eyes, bright hair, and a brave little walk. Bill liked her at once. I would love to talk to her, he thought, but if I land beside her, she may be frightened. How can I know what she feels? How can I become her friend? Bill thought and thought. Then he said to himself, I know. I will visit Elsa the sorceress. She is wise. She will know what to do. Now we have not told you about Elsa yet. Elsa lived deep in the woods in a little green cottage with a red roof. Around the cottage grew a wonderful garden full of flowers, daisies, asters, roses, bluebells, and tiny golden blossoms that rang softly in the wind. Elsa was a real sorceress, and as everyone knows, some sorceresses are kind and some are not. Elsa was kind, most of the time, but she knew that sometimes she could become a little grumpy. So every morning she added 3 drops of good sense to her coffee just to make sure her magic stayed gentle. But on the very morning Bill came to visit, Elsa had overslept and she had forgotten her drops. She was watering her daisies when she heard a great rustle of wings behind her. Good morning, Elsa, called Bill. Your flowers look beautiful today. Thank you, Bill, said Elsa. Good morning to you too. Come in, or rather, sit down outside, because you are much too big for my door. I'll make coffee and bring raspberry pastries. Now remember this very important thing. All dragons love sweets, especially raspberry pastries. Of course, said Bill. Who could say no to raspberry pastries? But Elsa, I really need your advice. Bill settled carefully in front of the little cottage. He was always amazed that Elsa could live in such a tiny house. The roof did not even reach his shoulder. Soon Elsa came outside with coffee, pastries, and a very serious look. "So, Bill," she said, "what is troubling you?" Bill sighed. "I want to understand people. I want to be friends with them. Today I saw a little girl near the village of White Clouds. She was looking after geese. I wanted to speak to her, but I am too big. If only I were someone else, maybe we could become friends." Elsa nodded slowly. "Well, Bill," she said, "perhaps you have already found the answer. You are very big." And then Elsa stopped. Her green eyes narrowed. Her gaze had fallen on Bill's tail. His great dragon tail was lying right across her bed of asters. The asters were completely crushed. Now, if Elsa had remembered her drops of good sense, she would have taken a deep breath. She would have said, "Bill, dear dragon, please move your tail." But Elsa had forgotten her drops, so instead she became very, very cross. "Well, Bill," she said, folding her arms, "you want to become someone else, do you?" Bill blinked. "I only meant—" But Elsa had already lifted her hands. "Arius ka vidike." She blew the spell toward Bill and snapped her fingers. Pop! Where the huge dragon had been sitting, there was now a tiny emerald green snail. The snail had a shiny shell and two bright red horns. Elsa looked down at him. "Well then," she said, still a little grumpy, "go and make friends with your little girl." Then she clapped her hands, and Bill disappeared. Bill did not understand what had happened. One moment he had been sitting beside Elsa's cottage. The next moment he was in tall grass near the stream outside the village of White Clouds. But everything looked strange. The sky was very, very far away. The grass stood above him like a forest. Something heavy was pressing on his back. Bill tried to flap his wings. Nothing happened. "Why can't I fly?" he cried, but his voice came out very small. "What happened to me? Where am I? Am I in a land of giants?" He tried to take one step. It was terribly slow. "Oh dear," whispered Bill, "this is not good." At last Bill reached the stream. He was very thirsty. He bent down to drink, and then he saw his reflection in the water. A little garden snail was staring back at him, a green little snail with red horns. Bill gasped. Then he understood. The snail was him. He was no longer Bill the dragon. He was Bill the snail. The poor dragon, or rather the poor snail, felt so shocked that he did not know what to do. Suddenly, Bill heard a loud honk behind him. He quickly pulled his head into his shell. The little girl was coming to the stream with her geese. Her name was Ilya. The geese waddled toward the water, flapping and honking. Then the biggest goose saw Bill's shell and the red horns peeking out. The goose stretched out its neck. Snap! It tried to grab him, but Bill's shell was wet from the stream and he slipped right out of the goose's beak. Plop! He landed on the ground. Now all the other geese saw him too. They came closer and closer and closer. Bill squeezed his eyes shut. "Oh no," he thought. "Is this the end of Bill the dragon?" But then he heard a bright little voice. "Shoo, shoo, go away, silly geese." The geese stepped back, grumbling to themselves. Ilya picked up the tiny snail and placed him gently in her palm. "Well, hello there," she said. "You almost became lunch?" Bill peeked out. The girl smiled. "You are funny," she said. And do you know what? You look just like our dragon Bill. Bill understood almost nothing of what she said, but he did understand one thing. She thought he, a snail, looked like himself, a dragon. That was very confusing. So Bill sank deep into thought and stayed quiet until evening. That evening, Elia brought the snail home. She showed him to her mother and father. "May I keep him?" she asked. Her parents looked closely. "He is a very sweet little garden snail," said Mother. "But if you keep him," said Father, "you must take care of him yourself." "I will," said Elia. And that was how Bill the dragon began living in a human home. He lived on the kitchen windowsill among the flower pots, and to tell the truth, he liked it there. From the windowsill, Bill watched the family every day. People were very surprising. In the evening, they sat together at the table. They ate dinner. They talked about their day. They listened to each other. They gave advice. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they were quiet. After dinner, Father told Elia stories. Mother brushed Elia's hair and braided it into 2 soft braids. Many of Father's stories were about dragons and giants. Bill was amazed by how many silly things people believed about dragons. "Dragons do not sleep on mountains of gold every night," he thought, "and we do not roar before breakfast." But still, Bill loved the stories. They were warm and beautiful. Soon Bill learned a new word: family. It was a small word, but it felt big and soft inside his heart. Family meant sitting together. Family meant listening. Family meant caring for someone, even when they were very small. Bill began to understand that he wanted a family too. And Elia became very fond of her little snail. She carried him carefully from room to room. She told him secrets. She showed him flowers. She even gave him tiny crumbs of cake. And Bill, who had once been a mighty dragon, was happier than he had expected. The days passed. Summer turned into autumn. Autumn turned into winter. Slowly, softly, the great green hills were covered with snow. The trees wore white coats, the roofs sparkled, and the windows were painted with frosty lace. One cold winter day, Elsa the sorceress suddenly remembered Bill. "I have not seen that dragon for a very long time," she said. Her garden was covered in snow now, and the crushed asters were long gone. Elsa was no longer angry. In fact, she felt sorry, very sorry. She looked into the steam rising from her magic cauldron. There, in the mist, she saw Bill sitting on a kitchen windowsill. He looked safe. He looked well. But still, Elsa knew she had to apologize. So she turned herself into a snail and appeared at Elia's house. Bill was sitting on the windowsill, looking at the frosty patterns on the glass, when he saw a golden snail appear beside him. The snail had green horns. Bill stared. "This snail reminds me of someone," he thought. The golden snail wiggled her horns. "Hello, Bill," she said softly. "It's me, Elsa." "Elsa?" cried Bill. "You're a snail." "Yes," said Elsa. "I came to say I'm sorry. I was angry about my asters, and I should not have turned you into a snail." Bill lowered his red horns. "Oh, Elsa," he said, "I am sorry too. I did not mean to crush your flowers with my tail." They looked at each other. There was so much more they wanted to say, but just then something strange happened. "What are the people doing?" whispered Elsa, hiding halfway inside her shell. "I don't know," said Bill. Elia's family had brought a fluffy Christmas tree into the room. They placed it in the middle of the floor. Then they began to decorate it. There were shining bowls, little wooden toys, golden ribbons, and tiny lights that glowed like stars. Soon the whole room smelled of pine needles, tangerines, warm cake, and sweets. Everything felt bright, everything felt cozy, everything felt like magic. Elia gave Bill a drop of cocoa because by now she knew he loved it. She also gave him a few chocolate crumbs from the cake. Bill and Elsa sat together by the warm cup. They dipped their horns into the cocoa and laughed. They talked about everything, about flowers, about dragons, about people, about geese. And yes, during his time with the humans, Bill had learned to make that lovely strange face called a smile. It suited him very well. Then the clock began to strike 12. One soft chime, then another, and another. Elsa sighed. "Oh," she whispered, "the spell is ending." The room shimmered. The stars outside seemed to lean closer. And suddenly, whoosh! Bill was flying. He was flying under a sky full of stars. Below him lay the snow-covered great green hills. Elsa was sitting on his back, holding on gently. Bill spread his great wings and glided through the quiet winter night. At last, he landed in front of Elsa's little green cottage with the red roof. Elsa climbed down. "Are you angry with me?" she asked. Bill shook his head. "No," he said. "Being a snail taught me many things." He looked up at the stars. "I learned that it is best to be myself, truly myself." Elsa smiled. Bill smiled too. Then he asked, "May I fly over tomorrow morning? I could bring hot cocoa with marshmallows, and perhaps we could have a snowball fight." Elsa laughed. "Of course," she said. And above them, the Milky Way sprinkled the night with silver light. From that day on, Bill found a way to be friends with Elia while still being a dragon. At first, Elia was surprised, very surprised, but then she looked into Bill's kind eyes, and she remembered her little green snail with red horns. After that, they often met near the stream. Bill brought cocoa. Elia brought stories. They talked about everything, especially about gnomes. Neither of them understood gnomes at all, and that made them laugh every time. When spring came, white snowdrops began to bloom under the trees. They looked like tiny stars scattered over the earth. Bill flew above them with Elsa sitting on his back. The air was soft, the snow was melting, the world smelled of new leaves and warm sunlight. And Bill thought, "This spring I will tell Elsa that I like her." He did not know exactly how to say it yet, but he felt that flying over white snowdrops under the wide blue sky would be the perfect moment. And perhaps Elsa already knew, because she smiled quietly, and Bill smiled too. The great green hills shone below them. The wind was gentle, the sky was bright, and Bill the dragon was happy, because he had learned to be kind, to be brave, to be a friend, and most of all, to be himself.